Okay. I think Hashem that we're able to learn Torah every day. And as course of our learning, we should have the Beis Hamikdash immediately. Naftali, you with me? You hear me?
Yes, you're coming through fine. Thank you.
Okay. We're going to start on Samech Amud Beis on the top. Thank you. Second line. Yeah, it starts like this. Amar Rabbi Lazar. Rabbi Lazar is Rabbi Lazar ben Pedas, the friend of Rabbi Yochanan, friend student. It says, Torah, Reiv Viksav Miyat Alpeh. The majority of Torah is the written Torah. There's only a small amount of the Torah that was given orally. Now, Rashi adds in, we say the written Torah, we don't just mean the text of the words, we mean the text of the words with all of the interpretations that are given along with it. And there's a minority of it which is given over without any textual support. The verse that Rabbi Lazar quotes for this is I wrote the majority of the Torah, and it's considered like a stranger. We'll see in a moment what's that. Rabbi Yochanan says the opposite. Reiv al peh, majority of the Torah is oral Torah. There's only a small amount that's written down. Shenemar, the pasuk says, by the mouth, by alpi is like on the mouth of, is by according to these words, which means that it's most of it is oral. Okay. No, they're the same generation. Yeah. Let's go further, then we'll explain a little bit. What about us? Rabbi Yochanan do? Nami yaksiv echtav lerubi terasi. It says, write the majority of the Torah, which means the majority of the Torah is written. It says, that is actually a rhetorical question. It's saying, echtav lerubi terasi, you want me to write the majority of the Torah like when you write things down, then the nations of the world can also read it, and then they take it as theirs. And then what's special about the Jewish people? You become like strangers, basically. You become like everyone else, just like the Old Testament, right? They took it like us, so they say they're the same. They have it, we have it. So what do the nations not have? They don't have the oral Torah. That's what they don't have. I'm holding. What does Rabbi Lazar do? Nami yaksiv ki al pi advar mela, that is given over orally. He says the majority is written. He says mishum desakifa lemigramayo, lemigmarino, because the oral Torah is harder to study because you have to memorize it. So that's the difference. It's not because it's the majority; it's just because it's difficult. Well, I think. This is my own theory. You can explain maybe there's two approaches to the Torah Sheba'al Peh. One approach is that the written Torah is the main Torah, and the oral Torah is a commentary that goes along with it. Right. And so it interprets the written Torah. Other approaches is that the oral Torah was really like the lesson. That was the main lesson. Like you go to a lecture, you have the oral Torah, that's the main lesson. Then after the lesson, you see someone's notes. That's just like the shorthand of the lesson. Those are two approaches. It could be that's the machlekes here, Rabbi Lazar and Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan says the main Torah is the oral Torah. That would be like the second approach. And there's some of it which is written down. That's like notes that you have from the. I saw this from Rav Hirsch. Rav Hirsch has this. He doesn't explain this Gemara, at least that's not what I saw. But that possibility is there. Darash Rabbi Yehuda bar Nachmani, Meturgamani de Reb Shimon ben Lakish. Rabbi Yehuda bar Nachmani. Usually we have Shmuel bar Nachmani. They're right. It's Shmuel bar Nachmani. Is Rabbi Yehuda bar Nachmani, who is the translator of Reb Shimon ben Lakish. He says, he says the contradiction. There's one verse says that you should write these things. The other one says because these things were said. The Torah was said. Okay, so how was this? He says, well, there's two. There's two types of lessons. The written Torah, you're not allowed to study by heart. And the things that are the oral Torah, you're not allowed to write it down. So the written Torah, the only things that we're allowed to say by heart are things that we say every day, which are, we're very fluent in, probably Shema and that type of stuff. But if it's written down, you don't need to memorize it. Because you have it. The way that the oral Torah was passed down was through memorization. They had to study it. That's what, they had to recite it. Well, the Bei Rabbi Yishmael Tana, in the house of Rabbi Yishmael was taught Eila, says Eila, Ksayv L'chas Advar Ma'ela, or Ki Al Pi Advar Ma'ela. Eila, when it says Eila, Ata Kaisav, this is what you can write. Ksayv L'chas Advar Ma'ela. Ata Kaisav halachas, but you're not allowed to write down the oral Torah, the halachas, which probably means halacha l'mesh misinai, or those. Amar Rabbi Yechanan. Rabbi Yechanan says, like Karas HaKadosh Baruch Hu Brisim Yisrael al B'shvil Dvarim Shebal Peh. The covenant that Hashem made with the Jewish people was with the Dvarim Shebal Peh, was with the oral Torah. Because on these things, and it says, uses the word Al-Pi, on the mouth of these things, I have made a covenant with you, with Israel. Okay.
Can we safely say that the Shas pretty much supports the whole Torah Shebal Peh, or just some of it?
Probably 90% of it. You still have those halachic midrashim that are not included in the Sifra, the Sifri, Mechilta. Those other books that are on Shemais Vayikra Bamidbar Dvarim. Those are there are halachas in there that possibly aren't brought over here.
Generations were rabbinic ordinance and stuff was added on to it. The disputes.
Who is that explaining? Is that explaining Rabbi Yechanan?
It applies to both. Just as the majority here.
Oh, so Rav Biksav. It's explaining Rabbi Lazar. He's quoting a Ritva that says that how could it be that the majority of the Torah was written and only a minority is oral? When we look at the written Torah, it's only a few books, and the oral Torah is like 20-something volumes, right? How many volumes are in the Art Scroll? 72 volumes in the Quran. And this, how many are these?
I understood something else. I think
Another 40 volumes. So you have 40 volumes, and this the Chumash is only tops 24 volumes. If you're going to include the Tanakh. So how is it possible? So he quotes the Ritva that says that originally the Shas wasn't so big. Originally it was over the years it got larger. Okay. Ma'arvin bebayis yashan mipnei darki shalom. When it comes to making an Erev, you use the same house that you use the whole time to increase harmony. You don't change the house where the Erev is placed. My time, what's the reason? If it's because of the honor of the person that is hosting the Erev, that's the reason. Originally, there's two interpretations here in Rashi what Shipur is. Rashi's first interpretation is that there was a shofar, like a trumpet, that they would use to blow on Erev Shabbos. Now, where was that shofar held? It was held by Rav Yehuda, L'B'Seif Bei Rabba, and then it was held by Rabba, L'B'Seif Bei Rabbi Yosef, and then it went to Rabbi Yosef, L'B'Seif Bei Abai, and then it went to Abai, L'B'Seif Bei Rabba, then it went to Rabba. It's listing out for us all the heads of the yeshivas in order. Rabbi Yehuda, Rabba, Rabbi Yosef, Abaya, and Rava. Rashi's second interpretation brings from Rabbi Shri Regain, and it's also quoted in Tosfos, that there was a pushka, like a tzedakah box. It's the olden days. The tzedakah box was called shipura, because it was in the shape of a horn that you could put things in, but it was hard to get them out. Because it was so that way. It was like a wide bottom, but there was only a slit on the top to get it in. So there was this tzedakah box that was for the yeshiva, for the students, that they had it. First it was in this house, then in that. You see, you can move it around, and there was no disrespect to the person that had it before. So the Gemara answers, Elam Mishum Chashada. The problem is different. The problem is, we have another two interpretations here, Rashi and Tosfos. Rashi's interpretation is that if the Erev is usually in one house, and then you move it, someone goes over there and says, "Hey, where's the Erev? Oh, the people in this place, they don't use an Erev. They carry without an Erev. So they're going to be suspected of carrying without an Erev because it's not in its usual place." Tosfos has a different interpretation. Tosfos says the problem is that why did you move the Erev? You're going to say, well, the person was stealing from it. He was nibbling at it. So that's why they moved it. Okay, so by the shofar, there wouldn't be that problem, because whose house was it? It was in the house of the head of the school who was collecting it for the students. Wouldn't be that. No one would suspect that he was taking away from the students. Okay. Bar Shukar of Lama. We have this discussion here about the water. Who's allowed to take the water? This one is good for your work. Who's allowed to take the water from the stream? We said that the one that's closest to the beginning of the stream is allowed to take it. Takes it first. Itmar. We have a statement. B'nai Nara. People that have fields along the river. Rav Amar Tatai Shasamayim Beresha. Rav says that when it comes to watering their field, the ones that are in the lowest down of the hill, they're the ones that can take the water first. Yes, it has to first go down, and then they can, and then once they take, then it works its way back up. Shmuel Amar, Shmuel says, Eloi, the one's closest to the opening of the spring or wherever the source is of the river. Shasamayim Beresha, they're the ones that take it first. Yeah. Now, with the mazel, if it's just flowing, regular flow, Kuli al Malay Pligi, everyone agrees that whoever wants to take can take water. There's no problem. You're not changing the flow of the water. Ki Pligi b'miskar v'ashkuyi. The whole machlekes over here is who's allowed to dam the river to let it overflow into their fields. So Rav says, let's go for Shmuel first. Shmuel Amar Eloi Shasabayim Beresha. Shmuel says the upper ones are allowed to dam the water first and let it overflow into their fields. The Amri Anan Mekarvin Tvei, we're close to the source, so it's coming to us. We take first. Rav Amar Tatai Shasamayim Beresha, that the lower down takes first. The Amri Nara Kapasti Lezel. They say let the water flow naturally, and don't mess it up before it even gets to the bottom. That's Rav's view. Talking about when you're going to dam the river, who's allowed to dam it? Only after it makes it all the way down are you allowed to dam it. Tanan. I assume what this means is that the rain melts, the snow melts or something, and then the river starts to flow. It's like seasonal. So you can only start to do this when it's when the water makes it down. I assume that's what it means. Tanan, 1 second. We have a Mishnah. It says there's going to be a question on Rav. If the Mishnah that says clearly, not like Rav, the Mishnah says that the pit that's closest to the stream, to the opening of where the water starts, That's what they take first because of to increase harmony. So Tirgum Shmuel Aliba the Rav. Shmuel answers according to Rav. They always explain that even though they're arguing, but they're looking for the truth. So Shmuel says that I can answer the question on Rav, even though it's a support for me, but I can still answer the question. It's not a real question on Rav, but we're talking about we're talking about that he's not doing anything to fill up the pit, the cistern, or the reservoir that he has. It's just naturally filling it up. And so that's why there's no problem. So the Gemara says, so why would I need a Mishnah to tell me that the water that naturally fills up that pit is allowed to let it naturally fill it up? What are you expecting? The Gemara says, could have thought that we tell him that you have to close up your reservoir so that we should all get the water equally, and then only afterwards you can open up your reservoir. So Kamash Malan, that he doesn't have to do that. He doesn't have to do an action to stop the water from filling up his reservoir. He can't do an action to fill it up, but he doesn't have to do an action to stop it from filling up. Hinduism, I looked it up this morning in the Jastra dictionary. It says Hinduism means proportion. Right, and we'll take in proportion. He quotes in the Jastra, they said that Handasa is geometry, which is the Hindasa, it would be like a derivative of that. Or Handasa was a later word, geometry. Is that in modern Hebrew? How do you say geometry in modern Hebrew? I don't know. Yeah, geometry.
No, it is Handasa.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Handasa is the subject. Yeah.
Yeah, so this would be like the source of that word. Means proportion. Okay. Kamash Malan, that we don't say that, then he's allowed to let it fill up, even though he's getting much more first. Amar Rav Huna bar Tachlifa. Rav Huna bar Tachlifa says, Hashtad liyat merachos like kamar v'lekamar. Since we don't have established the halachas, like called alim gvar. Whoever takes first, alim means strong. Yeah, like the Hebrew word alma, like a young girl, or alam, I think it's a young boy, strong. The Christians, the virgin, they translate alma as a virgin. That's one of the things. We say it just means young. A young.
In Spanish, it means the soul.
Oh, yeah. So, but it comes from in Aramaic, it means strong. So young, strong, youthful. That would be the thing. Called the olive. Yeah. Called the alim gvar. Whoever is strong, he wins. So in other words, basically they fight over it. That's the. There's a little bit of a question on this Gemara, because why does Rav Huna bar Tachlifa not know the rule of the halachas like Shmuel whenever there's an argument about monetary matters? So Rashi says he doesn't hold of that. That's that rule itself was a machlekes. Yeah, how do you the machlekes, and how do you resolve the machlekes? Yeah, okay. Usually we have a rule that whenever there's a machlekes Rav and Shmuel, when it comes to ritual law, we follow Rav. When it comes to monetary law, we follow Shmuel. They were expert in that was their expertise. So over here we have a machlekes Rav and Shmuel. We should follow Shmuel. It's a monetary issue. Who gets the water? It's not ritual. A ritual law would mean like kashrus or something, or Shabbos, something like that. So, but apparently Rav Huna bar Tachlifa doesn't hold of that rule that we follow Shmuel when there's a monetary law. Rav Simi Barashi yasal kamida Abaya. Rav Simi Barashi comes to Abaya. Amalei, he says to him, "Leisvan mar beidna." Let the master make time for me. It means to study. He wants to make a chavrusa with Abaya. Amalei, I have time, but it's for myself. He says, "V'leisvan mar belela." So what about in the evening? It doesn't stop, right? Amalei, isli mayel ashkui. In the evening, I have to water my field. People, they don't water their field during the day because the water in the sun burns the, right? But I don't think this is what was happening. I think Abaya was learning by day, and at night he would go out to water the field. I'm not sure if it's specifically because that's a better time to water the field, or because he wasn't He was busy during the day learning. Amalei, anamashkina leilamar, maya biyamam, avleisamar belela. How about this? I'll water your field. This is Rav Simi Barashi. I'll water your field by day, and you study with me by night. Amalei lechaye. Chaye is yes. Emes. Like, okay, good, right? How do they translate lechaye in there? It says yes.
Very well.
Very well, indeed. Azali lai. So what Rav Shimon Barashi does, he has a little trick over here. He goes to the fields on the top of the hill, and he says, Amalu, tatoi shasumaya beresha. You know, the ones on the bottom, according to Rav, they're supposed to get the water first, so don't take the water yet. Azali tatoi, he goes to the bottom. Amalu, he says, Eloi shasumaya beresha. You know, Shmuel says that the ones on the top are supposed to take the water, so don't take the water yet. Adahachi, meanwhile, Zachar Miskavashke, he dams the river right by Abaya's field, and he waters Abaya's field. So Abaya, then he comes to Abaya, Malay, Beit Shrei, obviously. You paskin like a Rav and you paskin like Shmuel. You have to pick an opinion. You can't just go like both and then win. So like Tamino Abaya Leper Dishat. Abaya refused to eat from the fruits that year. Felt that it was like stealing.
During the day, the other people had the rights to the water.
How did Rav Shimi Barashi get it? Well, he changed it, I guess.
Yeah, he went and
Hillel is suggesting that they had times when they were allowed to use the water. So maybe Abaya's time was at night. It's a suggestion.
Whoever benefits from the water at the top is going to diminish the water for everyone else below, right?
So that's two opposing opinions. You can't do both.
You have to pick one.
Then it's okay. Then everybody would respect that.
Yeah, if that's what we go by. That's what we go by. Hanu b'nei bei charmach. Harmach, maybe. Who were these people from Charmach? The Azal Karabaresha, the Shanvasa. They dug at the top of the Shanvasa, that's the name of a river, I think. Yeah. And Vadrua Vashadua Bashilinara, and then they let it go back to come around. So basically what they did was they made a loop. Oh, that's good. I'm not sure what that is. So that's they're telling me they actually know where the river is. In the Quran, they say they know what the river is. So there's the Euphrates River, and then there's the Shanvata River. Shanvata, okay. And there's a Shanvata River that comes out of the Euphrates River. And anyway, that's the Euphrates. That's not relevant for us. What's relevant for us is that these people dug out the. They made that they diverted the water so that it should go around their field from all sides, and that way they could get the water to water the full field. And then they let the water come back in. Sounds good. Good idea. Yeah, like a circular driveway. So, Asur Lakami Abaya. They came in front of Abaya. Who came in front of Abaya? The people on the top, people on the bottom, I'm not sure. Amalei Kamiskal Lanarin says they're ruining the water flow. It could be they're ruining the water flow. Rashi, I think, explains this, that the water is slowing down because it didn't have the same speed. When you ruin the water flow, so then it sinks in and it makes it a mush instead of just the water rushing by. So Amalahu, Sabaya says, so dig it deeper. You dig it deeper, automatically it's going to flow faster. So it won't sit over there and it won't ruin the land. Amrale Kayapshi Peirin. You can't fix problems like this. You just say you dig deeper and then that's going to solve this. Everything has a repercussion. He says when you do that, when you dig it deeper, then it doesn't always flow fast, and sometimes the water is way down, and then the channels, whatever they had for the water to flow out to the fields, would dry up, and then the fruits dry up. They said then you have to stop what you're doing, and you have to let the water go back in its natural way.
Build these diversionary
You can't build the diversion if it affects,
driveways.
right? If it affects the fruits of the other people. It's good, no?
They did, the Kissimmee was the exact opposite. That nature had created all of these loops, right? So they said, oh, we see a channel like that, we'll make a straight line. That way, all the loops become fields.
Uh-huh.
And so much water went through there that ruined the whole system. 20 years later, they said, let's put the loops back in. So it would go this way, this way, this way, this way. And that's, they call it restoration. It's like, it's almost the opposite of this. Here, they try to put loops in because, oh yeah, and it would slow down the water going through this. Yeah, it would affect the whole channel.
Right.
So if you touch nature, you mess things up.
Very interesting.
That's the Kissimmee River restoration.
Why did they? What were they concerned about when they took away all those loops?
You know, when engineers see a natural thing goes like this, they say, well, why don't we make it straight? And that way, all that land that was used up in the loops, we could put cattle on it and use it. But then they realized that the water flowed so quickly this way that nothing got watered here, and all the pollution here got sent down there instead of being silted this way.
Amazing. Very interesting. Okay. The traps of wild animals and birds and fish. If you take from those traps, you know that someone set up that trap, so even though the owner didn't come and take it yet, but it doesn't mean that it's for free. So there's gezel mifnei darkei shalom. If you steal, if you take from that, that's considered stealing because we wanted to increase harmony. That people that set them up, they should be able to keep it. Well, comes along Rabbi Yossi and he says, no, it's really gezel, right? Ba'azule, I don't know what these things are. Va'ayare, these are types of traps where the thing comes inside it. Different materials where these traps are made out of. Kuli amalei pligi, everyone agrees that it's actually stealing. Ki pligi, where's the machlokes between Rabbi Yossi? Is it really stealing or is it just to increase harmony? That's belechi, the kukri. That's talking about if it's a hook or another type of hook, something that catches things, strings. But it's nothing is, it's not like a vessel that it goes into the owner's vessel and you're taking it out of that. Different types of traps. I don't know the ins and outs. I don't know what it's made out of. Pictures there.
Oh, it just sounds like different
Of the words. Okay, Metzias Cheir Shaita, if you find something. Oh, really? If you find something that belonged to a, I'm sorry, if a Cheir Shaita V'Katan finds something, you can't take it out of their hands, and because of Darkei Shalom, and Rabbi Yossi says it's Gesel Gomer. Amalei Rav Chisda, Gesel Gomer Midivreim. It's only rabbinically considered theirs. L'may nafkamina, what's the difference? Leitzia b'dayanim. So the question is, my nafkamina. What's the difference if you say that it's stealing because of rabbinic law? What's the dealing if you say that it's stealing because of Darkei Shalom? Both of those are rabbinic. The answer is there's two types of rabbinic law to increase harmony. Is it like just for pleasantness, or is it because it's actually the rule? So both of those are rabbinic. So we're saying, well, there is a difference because if it's for pleasantness, you can't take it out of, you can't go to court and get it back.
How do you rob for pleasantness?
You don't rob because of pleasantness.
Oh.
Right.
Like that, and then they're considered like they own whatever.
Right.
There's like if you catch it, if one of those traps, you're probably gonna get trouble.
Right. Yeah. Okay. There's things that are confusing. Let's say, there's tissues here in the by the sink. So you take a tissue, you use it, and you go. But so you want to take a whole bunch in your house. So there's rules about that. So just because it's there and you're allowed to take doesn't mean. So anyway, some of these things are like really rules that are like for you could take it out in court. Some of them are just like etiquette. You don't do that. You don't take more than what you need in a public thing. So question is, what can you go to court, or can the police tell you, hey, you can't, took too much or something? So it depends. If it's Gesel Gomer, then it could be taken in court. If it's just etiquette, we don't do that. So then you can't go to court over that. Ani hamanakef bereisha zayis mashetachtav chulu. We have a poor person that's on top of the olive tree that's taking the olives, and they're falling on the ground. You're not supposed to go to the bottom under the tree and collect them. And Rabbi Yossi said that it's Tarkish, that it's Gesel Gomer. Tana was taught in a brayse, Mlikit v'nasim biyad, there is a Gesel Gomer. If you're actually taking them in your hand and then dropping them, that's a different story. Then everyone agrees that it's stealing. Rav Kana v'kazel l'Hutzel. Rav Kana was going to Hutzel, that's a city. Chazi l'gavra davishadi ufi. Tamri. He sees a fellow that's throwing sticks. I guess at this date palm, and the dates are falling down. Azal kaman ketvachel. He's goes and this is Rav Kana, goes and he eats some of them. Amalei chazi mar dibiyadi shadasinu. See that I took them in my hand. Is that what he's saying? I threw them with my hand, which means they're mine. You shouldn't be taking them. You must come from the territory from Rabbi Yoshia. Therefore, you know these halachas very well, because Rabbi Yoshia was a very good teacher. He would teach all the people in his community the halachas. And Kari Allah, he said about him, Tzaddik Yisei Dolam, that the tzaddik is the foundation of the world. I'm not sure exactly what that's teaching me. I guess it means that the tzaddik makes sure that everyone knows what they need to know, like the support. Let's see, there's a comment here. What does that mean?
I think it's just like a standard. It shows like an example. The righteous, they lead by example.
Oh, really?
I think.
I don't see any comment here. That would be different than what Rashi's saying. Hillel wants to say that it's tzaddik yisei dolam, that the tzaddik shows the people how to live. Rashi says that he was teaching it. He would speak in public. Teach. Okay. You can't protest when there's non-Jews that are collecting leket shikha and pei. Those are the things that are left for the poor. They're coming together with the Jewish people and collecting. You can't protest against them. Because we want to increase harmony. It was taught in the Bryce, that we support the non-Jewish poor together with the Jewish poor. You visit the sick, the non-Jewish sick together with the Jewish sick. You even bury the dead together with the Jewish dead, obviously in a different cemetery. But nevertheless, you still bury the dead. That's what it says.
That's what it says.
This is
Like some people go to an old age home on a Friday. Just show me the Jewish people that need to be visited. They don't try to do other people.
Right.
It's okay if it's a Jewish elderly home where there's only Jews in it, but it's like I go here and then the other guy down there. We're not supposed to do that.
I'm not sure. Definitely if there's two people in the same room. He is supposed to, yeah, it's both of them. Okay, Mishelas Isha Lachaverta Chshida Al Shvius. Very interesting over here. A woman can lend her friend a nafa. That's a sifter. I think kvara is another type of sifter, a strainer or something. Rechayim is a mill, and tanner is the oven. She's allowed to lend these equipment to her friend, even though her friend is not so careful about Shemitah. It may end up using them for forbidden foods.
A utensil that has like some remnants of food on it or something, right? Is it permissible to use like if it's a shemitah, kind of like let's say it's like a chametz keli.
Right, yeah, that's a good question. If the Jonathan is asking if vessels absorbed Shemitah food at a time when the Shemitah was supposed to be taken out of the house, does the taste of the food enter into the pots? That's what you're saying, and they have to kasher it. I'm not sure. I don't know the law about that. That's an interesting question.
It's a very good question. Not that you need my view, but Rashi takes the other view. We're not concerned about your problem that you might later on. We're concerned that you're
Right.
that you're going to cause someone
else to sin.
Continue their sin.
Right. If you take this too far, then you can say, Yitzi Spaltner shouldn't really be selling milk and meat in the same store. Someone may buy it and cook it. It's gonna be crazy.
Sorry. Not till next month.
No, so the answer is that it's not. There's no. You can't protect. People can do. You can sell a knife. They could. I don't know what they could do. You can't protect like crazy like this. You just do everything in the normal way. What is that? Background checks. Okay, so the one thing that you're not allowed to do is you're not allowed to actually go and help. Literally, to go and help her grind and separate the chaff on the Shemitah year when you're not allowed to. This is a little different. There's an amaretz which we're concerned. We're going to adjust this in the Gemara, but let's start it off like this. Some people weren't careful about meiser, and we always had to take meiser after if their food came from them, we had to take it just to be strict. So a woman that is careful about meiser is allowed to go and do work together with the woman that's not careful about meiser, even though that's her food. She's allowed to help her grind and all of this, even though there could be a problem that we're going to see in the Gemara that's going to adjust it a little bit. But once she adds the water to the grain, to the flour, she shouldn't touch it because the amaretz is going to contaminate it. Once it gets wet, then it gets contaminated. So, all of this, we said that you're allowed to do this, you're allowed to lend, you're allowed to, that's because of Darkei Shalom. You're allowed to support the non-Jews on Shemitah. Sounds like you're allowed to do work together with them in Shemitah. In other words, you can help them in their work. They don't have to keep the laws of Shemitah. You have to keep the laws of Shemitah. But you're allowed to do help with them.
Still benefits from.
They can, right? It's there. They can do. They don't have to keep the 613. But you can't help another Jew. And you also ask how they're doing. Even though when you do that, you're actually saying like Hashem should be with you, and you're putting Hashem's name on a non-Jew. Nevertheless, that's allowed. Verbal support. So machzikin, you're saying is verbal support. Yeah. That's how the Gemara is going to explain. Okay. Maishna Reisha Maishna Sefer. The Gemara says, what's the difference between case number one on Shemitah? You were not allowed to help the woman that wasn't careful with Shemitah. Case number two, the woman that's not careful with meiser, you are allowed to help her. What's the difference? Why are you allowed to go and grind together with her? Amar Abaye Reiv Hameretz Masrin. Abaye gives a good answer. Abaye says that Shemitah is a real problem. But when it came to the meiser, that's not a real problem because most of them actually take meiser. The majority of cases are good. So you're allowed to go. You don't have to suspect that this is the one that's not good. Rabba says, here we're talking about Amaretz according to Reb Meir. We have to see what that is. We'll see in a Brisa. The Tanya, we'll start in a Brisa. Ezo Amaretz. Who's someone that's an Amaretz that we were talking about, that the wife of an Amaretz, you're allowed to work together with her. Kol she'eino oichel chula b'tara. Reb Meir. You know what it's talking about? It's not talking about meiser. It's talking about that they have contaminated food. So fine, it's no problem. The Chum say different. Chum say an Amaretz to someone that doesn't take meiser. Okay, so according to Reb Meir, the food is contaminated, so the woman can go and help. One second. In the end of this clause, it says, but once you add the water, then you shouldn't be helping along. Sounds like that only now is an issue of tumah and tara, because now it's wet. Originally, there was no problem. Gemara says no. Reisha v'seifa b'tumah v'tara. They're both talking about tumah and tara. Reisha b'tumah schulin, seifa b'tumah schala. Originally, there was the issue of contaminating mundane food. We said, don't worry about that. You can help her even though it's going to be contaminated. But regular food, regular food, it's not a problem if it comes contaminated. You're not supposed to contaminate it. The chaver keeps all their food pure, but there's no prohibition in that. However, once it's turning into bread, then there's going to be an issue of contaminating the challah.
Contaminated with
Impurity, just any impurity that's on the woman.
Oh.
So this is Bisman Habayis.
Either Bisman bias or immediately after, when people were still careful with their food. Remember, we had in Nida, Chavrai and Mintkan Begal, we had people still keep the laws of purity even afterwards. Yeah, exactly. So when it comes to challah, that's a different story because challah is the part of the bread. It's the dough that's given to the Kohen, and that's supposed to be kept pure. If it becomes impure, they can't eat it. That's already, there's a mitzvah, and there's a prohibition to make it impure. So for that, it's becoming dough, then that's a problem. For a minute, 1 second, we have a contradiction. It says, you're allowed to grind the grain and then leave it with someone that's not so careful with Shemitah and someone that's not so careful with impurity, but you're not allowed to actually grind his grain. Now, because you're not allowed to support them. Now, we're talking about Eichle Chulin, it's regular Chulin. We're not talking about Challah, and still you're not allowed to. Amar Abaya says, let me explain to you why that was a problem over there. Over there, the person that you were grinding the grain with, why it would be a problem was because he was a kohen, and the food that he had was truma, and he is used to eating truma. And when you're going to go and help him, then he's going to end up eating this truma that's tummy, and that you're not allowed to do. By someone that's not a kohen, then it's different. By a not a kohen, he never eats truma, so he knows to stay away from it. If that's the case, mafkidim, then why are you allowed to deposit it there? But you said we can deposit with him. Raminu, mafkidim truma etzel Yisrael, amaretz v'lei etzel kohen amaretz, nishli begaspa. You're not allowed to even put it in his possession because he may end up. He's so accustomed to eating truma, he may end up taking the truma that's and making it tummy. Where it says, my skin gives a case that's called a nukimta. It says, I'll explain to you what's going on. What's going on here is that the food was wrapped up in an earthenware vessel that doesn't have any openings to it, so it can't become tummy. Gemara says, well, that's not so true, because if his wife is a nida, she could move it. If she moves it, a nida that moves something becomes tummy, even if they don't actually touch it, just from the moving of it. Rabbi Yirmi says it's not a problem. Khan, when did we say that you're not allowed to deposit it? That's prepare shochru. That's talking about fruits that were already got wet. Once fruits get wet, then they are susceptible to tumah. Khan, when did we say you are allowed to deposit it in the house? That's prepare shloyochru. That's talking about fruits that were not susceptible to tumah because they never got wet. Umar says Ramino, but there's a contradiction. It says if someone takes his grain to a grinder, that's either a kuti or an amaretz. It says we assume that it stayed the same, that it didn't get mixed with other things. Say that it's still good. We don't suspect that he switched it. Hi, my Rumya. He says, what is this contradiction that you're asking? Lavu kimna we said that we're talking about fruits that were not susceptible. So of course it's allowed. With the karila, my karila. So why do you ask the question originally? Because we had another problem. The problem was we said that they're still in their chazaka. We don't say that he switched it for other foods, but we don't say that they switched it for other foods. But we have a contradiction. If someone gives dough to his mother-in-law, he has to take meiser. His mother-in-law's an amaretz. He has to take meiser. He has to take meiser before he gives it, and he has to take meiser after he takes it. He has to take meiser twice. Machlefes hamiskalkel, because if it didn't come out good, she would switch it. So we're concerned that someone that's amaretz will switch the produce from one for the other. Gemara says hasam kidik time. Over there, it's a special reason, because Amar Rabbi Yehuda writes, but the kind of spita boisha mechasana. A mother-in-law is embarrassed in front of the son-in-law if she's going to give him back food that's not good. So she's going to switch it to make sure that the food is good. She doesn't want the son-in-law to complain about her. But in general, we're not concerned that people are going to switch things. But we have a Mishnah, even it says a yeshiva student that goes to an inn, he gives her grain to make into bread, the dough to make into bread. She bakes it. And then, but he has to take meiser before, he has to take meiser after. It says Hassam Moria va'amar. That's because it's a special case. This innkeeper, she says, Barbe Rab leichel chamima banaichel krira. It says, she's going to think that she's doing a mitzvah by giving him the better bread, which was her bread, which is more fresh. I'm going to give him the old bread. He says, yeshiva student. So she thinks he's doing a mitzvah. That's why he has to take meiser again. But in general, we're not concerned that people are going to switch. But we have a brisa. We're talking about switching grain one for the other when you deposit it there. Tanya Eishes Chaver Techenes Emesh Samara Bisman Shmit Meya. Avalei Bisman Shit Torah. Eishes Chaver can grind her grain together with Tamar. It's when she's tamei, but not when she's tar. Reb Shimon ben Elazar Eimer. Shimon ben Elazar says, "Af Bisman Shmit Meya Leititchen." Even when she's tamei, she shouldn't be grinding together with this other person. Because the other person is going to put it into her mouth. Gemara says, Hashta mignav ganva. She's taking the food from her husband. It doesn't even belong to her, it belongs to the husband. And they're not going to switch it. She steals. And you're saying that you can trust her, that they don't switch one grain for the other. Even an ox, you're not supposed to put a muzzle on it when it's threshing. So therefore, she's saying that it's not really stealing. This is just feeding the animal while it's threshing. So that would be, she thinks that that's acceptable. Okay, let's leave it over here.
When it says that